In the previous episode, I showed you how easy it is to use RuleTiles in the current setup. But this came with a problem. Due to our handling of the PreviewMap, the rule could not be applied for the preview. We also saw that some preview is shown, but after it has been drawn onto the correct tile map, you might not see the specific tile anymore. This applied especially for floors behind a wall. It is easier for your users to actually see how the tile will look like after it has been drawn. For this, we need to apply the preview not on a separate preview map, which has a different order, but on the map it should get drawn to. And believe me, this sounds way easier than it is. There are a couple of things that need some careful handling. If you are happy with the way everything is, or you don't have any cases where the current behavior annoys you, then you don't have to follow this. But be aware that upcoming episodes will be built up on this, so your code might look different than mine. We will need to update the handling of the BuildingCreator script. We're going to start by removing the old code and by extracting the preview to a new file or class. This will keep the responsibilities a little more clean, especially since the new preview handling will involve more code. So I start by creating a new script called PreviewHandler. For now, we leave it empty and switch to the BuildingCreator. Let's get rid of the PreviewMap variable here. We don't need this anymore. This will lead to a lot of errors wherever this map has been used. The amount of snippets where we made something with the PreviewMap shows that it was a good idea to handle all of this in a separate class. Go back to your PreviewHandler and remove the derivation from monoBehavior. This will be a default class, and if you have different scripts that can build, they all can have their own instance of a preview handler. Every preview will need the currently active tile map and the tile base that gets drawn. Previously, we only defined the tile base, because the tile map was always the preview map. Let's add our first public method, updateTile. This will set the two variables we created and will happen every time the user selected a new tile he wants to draw, because then we know the needed map and of course the tile itself. So let's tackle this part first. At first we need to instantiate the mentioned object from the PreviewHandler class. This can be done quite easy with one line. Now locate where you set your selected object variable. We already have a setter where we also handle some other things. Now add the updateTile call and set tilemap and tilebase as parameter. Let's take a look where they are coming from. The tilemap variable has a getter right here. It checks the selected object if there is a tilemap for the category. Otherwise, it uses the default map. Tilebase is set one line above, also based on the selected object, or it is null. When updating the selected object, we call a method called updatePreview. Let's take a closer look. We also call it here in the update, whenever the mouse position switches to a new tile. Now, this line is easy fixable. We replace the preview map simply with the tilemap variable, this one here. Look for the updatePreview method. This handles the preview when the user is not drawing something, but just moving the mouse, and always shows the selected tile for the grid position where the mouse is. Let's extract this behavior in our new handler class. We create two new public methods, setPreview and resetPreview. Both take a vector3 int as parameter for the current grid position. Before we implement the content, let's call those methods. We will set the preview for the current position and reset the last position. The preview handler already knows tilemap and tilebase, so there's no need to pass it. Now let's add code to those methods with the previous handling. For setting the preview, we will check if the tilemap might be null and return, because that would lead to errors. Checking for the tilebase is not necessary, because a null value can be used. For resetting the tile, we will set the tile with a tilebase of null. Okay, now I will simply comment out all the other error parts and show you something. You don't have to follow along. When testing, I can select something and there is a preview. But drawing is difficult. When I am fast enough, there are some wall remains. That's good. You can see they are drawn onto the according tile map. And let me disable the preview map. Okay, now selecting another one will also show a preview on the wall map as well. But when previewing on a tile where something has been set, it gets removed when switching the tile. So the reason we delete content when previewing is because we reset the preview tile with null. That worked on the preview map because its default value was always null, empty. But now we want to restore the tile that has been there before overdrawing it with the preview. So we need to keep track of the tile that has been there before. And thinking one step ahead, drawing lines and rectangles, this will not be a single value for one tile, but rather all the positions we will draw the preview. So let's implement this feature with this in mind. We create a dictionary which will save the previous tile base values for the position as key. Before setting a preview, we can fill it and on reset, use the saved value. On adding, the value makes sure it does not already exist. Then we can retrieve the current tile for the position. Of course, this must happen before overriding it with the preview. You might remember this behavior from how we implemented the history. On resetting the preview, we will check for a matching entry in the dictionary. Then we can use the tile base as new, or better old, value. Otherwise, we will set null, but this is just a fallback behavior. Currently, we also save null values, which might not be needed. And of course, remove the entry from the dictionary. When testing, you can see that I won't delete drawn elements anymore, and even set the previous value when using another tile. But it does not work when simply clicking, like wanting to set a tile at this position. This is because we already saved null as previous value there. Then we set a tile, but then we move on and still have the saved null value, so it gets removed again. And also the rectangle and line previews are not working, but it's an okay start. Let's solve the first problem. In a BuildingCreator, every real draw on the tilemaps happen in this draw item method. We updated the main logic for this in the building history episode. Now, we don't care if this is a tool or a tile for now. Go right to the end after this if-else statement and call the setPreview method. We will use the current grid position as position. This is where the mouse is right now. Since this call happens after we already set the new tile, this will be up to date. But remember, we will check if the key already exists, and if so, won't set anything. Now we could change this, but since we already have drawn and all the preview that is shown is basically the same as the tiles that should remain, we can just clear the dictionary. With the clear method, we simply clear the dictionary completely. And in theory, we don't have to draw again on the map, because we just draw what is already there. But it might be relevant later and doesn't hurt right now, so I'll leave it like this. When testing, you can see I can draw single tiles. And when drawing a rectangle, the position where the mouse is not missing anymore. That works great. Except, you're wondering what happens? Remember when I told you that I am not allowed to draw walls on top of other walls? The wall restriction thing? That leads to errors right now. This is something that needs to be fixed. So we somehow need to regard if the placement is forbidden, because currently we don't set a dictionary entry when placement is forbidden. When resetting, we then use the default set to null code line here, because there is no matching dictionary entry, and the set tile is gone. Since our preview handler can't know if this is forbidden or not, we will tell it this with a second variable when setting the preview. Then we still can save the previous value, but only will update the real preview for this tile if this is allowed. This is the main difference to the previous handling. Of course, we need to update this function call as well. Instead of checking if this drawing is allowed and only then setting the preview, we use the result of this call as second parameter. Now the preview handler decides how to handle the logic. Also update the second call in the drawItem method with the same function call. When testing, the problem is now fixed as well. So this looks quite good. I think we can now tackle the hold and preview part for rectangles and lines. Taking a look at the current setup, we have those different renderers here. They hold a bounce variable, and based on the bounce, we either draw the preview or the real tiles. While we are here, why not extracting this in a separate class as well? Yep, definitely. Create a new script called drawRenderer. This will be a static class, so we don't need to instantiate objects of it. For now, we need two static methods. Both have a bounceInt as return value. Previously, those two renderers wrote directly in this variable. Now they both create a new one, fill it, and return it. Let's copy the code from the line renderer here into the new static method. You can see we missed two variables, the start position on the grid and the current position. I add parameters for both and rename the used variables in the code. Now this data will this bounceInt and then returns it. I do the same thing for the rectangle renderer and also add the same parameters and change the variable names. So we can get rid of those preview methods here. Thanks to the errors, we can see they were called here in the handleDrawing method. We just replace these calls with a call to the new static method and save the return value directly into our bounce variable. So far so good. But how to draw the preview now? We have this drawBounce method here. This draws the bounce variable as building. We will update this to support the preview as well. Add a bool parameter indicating if this is a preview. The default value is false. So when this parameter is not given, it is assumed as false. Now we can do something different when it is a preview. This would, of course, be a call to the preview handler. But currently we can only set the preview for one single position. But we have multiple positions now. So looks like we need a new method. This one will also be called setPreview, but takes instead of single parameters, arrays of them. We already did similar things throughout the code. All we do is looping through those arrays, and for every value pair, call the single version of this method. Of course, this requires both arrays to be in the same order. Now let's call this method. We need to convert the positions list into an array, but we don't know the forbidden state thing. Let's add a bool list for those values. Now when we add the position to its list, we can also add the forbidden value based on this position. And then pass the list converted to an array into this method. Don't forget to call this method after setting your bounce variable here. Add true as second parameter to tell it will be a preview. When testing, we can draw rectangles again. And yeah, okay, it works almost. For every change in the mouse position, we set the bounce as preview. But there are still alt values. So we need to clear the preview so that alt values get removed and still needed ones are applied again. Currently, we only can reset the preview for one position. So we need a new method which resets every position in the dictionary. Again, it will have the same name but different parameters. Specifically, no parameters. We will simply loop through the dictionary, and for every value, we set the tilemap value to its previous tile. After this happened, we will clear the dictionary. For this, we can just call the public clear method here. Now, call this method every time before you set a preview for an array of values. When setting specifically for a single tile, we don't want this to happen. This little change improved the rectangle drawing a lot. It looks quite good now, and the previous values are being restored. Unfortunately, we can't talk that positive about the line renderer. The preview is not a real line, but on release it gets drawn correctly. And we can also remove already drawn stuff when hovering over it while drawing the preview. Quite simple. Unlike the rectangle, when drawing a line, the preview does not always match with the cell the mouse is in. And this leads to different updates. The one from the line renderer and the one single behavior we implemented at the beginning of this video. This preview update method gets called from this update loop here. After this happened, we include the line or rectangle renderers. Let's only call this simple update when we are not holding the left mouse button. This fixes the second problem, where we could remove drawn tiles beneath the cursor. The every second wall tile is drawn problem might not happen for you. Again, this happens because of my rule restrictions. We check for every tile if it is allowed to be drawn, but there already is a preview tile, so on the next update it draws the previous value null, and so this inverts regularly. Obviously, it does not make sense to forbid the placement, especially the one from the preview, if the existing tile base is of the same type. The user won't see any difference if this is allowed, but we can draw the line preview correctly. So let's fix this little part in the isForbidden method. All we need to do when checking if it is forbidden or not is to only forbid it when the rule matches and the existing tile is not the currently active one. If there is a tile at the current position, we will return if it is not the same. If not, it's true and therefore forbidden. Otherwise, the if condition might be true, but this will be false and is not forbidden. Of course, if there is no tile, we return not forbidden. The lines look good now, and you can already see the nice features of this. I don't see any preview where I can't place something. This is great. And we are almost done, but just almost. When testing a single click tile, like the items, there is this little flickering. And when I don't click, but hold, remember that we draw on release of the left mouse button, then yeah, the preview disappears. This is because we jump into the hold handling, and there is no case for a single rendered item. So let's get this fixed. Since we always use the draw bounce method in a case like this, we need to convert one single point, the current grid position, in a bounce int. For this, I add a new method, the single renderer, to the draw renderer. All it does is creating a bounce int for this one given position, so that we can execute the rest of the code. To the switch statement, add a default case and call the single renderer here. We don't care about the start position because we want the preview to be always there where the mouse is, so we pass the current grid position. Then this simple one tile bounce int is handled in the draw bounce method. Now the single items don't flicker on a default click. When I now hold the left mouse button, you can't see this, but the preview is transferred to the current mouse position. And on release, it gets drawn. Can you believe it? We are there. Almost. Wait for it. So we can draw rectangles, lines, and single items. And the reason we did all this, the rule tiles, works perfectly. Okay, besides the missing configuration. Ignore it. Okay, we have all of this. But what about the other features? The history? Looks like we need to click several times to revert one step. Yeah, definitely not working. But what about the tools? deleting? Yeah, still works. Just the preview might be a bit messy. Maybe. And one thing I noticed is this behavior while leaving the screen or reselecting something while holding. I'm not holding my left mouse button now. And on click, only one tile gets drawn, not the whole preview. But don't worry, all three are simple fixes. Grab all your remaining energy. Part 1. The history. When drawing the item, we save the previous value here. This worked previously, but now the previous tile has already been overwritten from the preview. Fortunately, we saved it already in this dictionary. I add a new public method, which will return us the saved tile base for a given position. If there is no entry, I will simply return null. This is possible because we know that everywhere where we draw something, there must have been a preview before. This null case should not happen. Now we just update this call to the newly created one, and the history should work. Yep, this works. Oh, on right click the preview is still there. Yes, like always, one bug fixed, another one found. It's quite simple. Let's just use the reset preview method when right clicking. Then this remaining blob will disappear. Okay, part 2, the tools. When drawing buildings, the preview and that what we place looks the same. That's why we only clear the dictionary and not call the reset preview method like we did on right click. But a tool might not look like this, which you can easily see based on the deletion tool. So all we need to do is to reset the preview, but only when it is a tool. Since we don't need this behavior down here for the tools, let's move this part into the else statement. Now, when tooling whatever, the preview gets removed. Unfortunately, our tool gets drawn onto the default map, because tools don't have their own map. And this default map has an order in layer of 0. That's why we can't see a preview on our walls, even though we can delete it. Since tools often should be rendered on top of everything, let's somehow bring the preview map back to life. I did not delete it, so I can just rename it. Otherwise, create a new tile map with a high order value. Now, in the BuildingCreator, I add a reference at the top. In the Tilemap getter, I can add a new if statement, which will check if the selected building object is a tool. If so, then it returns the tool map. Just don't forget to fill the slot in the inspector. Now we can see the delete preview on top of the wall. Unfortunately, we always draw something when selecting a new tool. Let's fix this together with the other mentioned problem with the holding, not holding thing. This all happens because we still have some connection between two different drawing steps. In the on left click, we check if we are drawing onto the map. That's fine, but let's add an else statement for when we are over one of the GUI elements, for example. Reset the preview and set the hold active variable to false. This variable must also be set to false on right click. Now, there should never be an active hold event without really holding the left mouse button. And we also don't have preview remains when selecting a new buildable. Basically, that's everything for this feature. All I want to do now is sorting the BuildingCreator script a little bit. I will show you this. You can just slow down the video and follow along, but you don't have to. Thank you for watching, and also thank you to everyone supporting me and the channel. Special thanks to my supporters on Patreon, Patrick, Naxwomo and Belgian Librarian. Thank you all. And as usual, if you enjoy the content, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.